Hello, my name is Benjamin Ellin, and you're listening to the Us People podcast with Xavier Rocks.
Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of the Us People podcast. I'm your host, Xavier Rocks, and today I'm humbled to have Benjamin here with me, who is a music director, a composer, and a conductor. Thank you so much, Benjamin, for coming on the Us People podcast. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. It's a great pleasure to be here and to be chatting with you.
Thank you so much. So my first question to you, Benjamin, is please tell me a little bit about where you grew up and your influences around you when you were growing up to make you want to become a conductor and a composer, and also within music in general.
Okay, wow. Well, as you might be able to tell, I'm from the north of England. I'm from Bolton, which is in Lancashire. It's not in Greater Manchester. I don't want to get into the politics of that, about the north.
Someone else told me that, actually.
You what?
Someone else told me that as well, the whole politics between the Manchester and your... Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I love Manchester, but it's, I regard myself as a Lancastrian. Anyway, I feel I've alienated loads of people already. I'll get back to the music now. So my in certain respects, I was very, very lucky, growing up. I'm the youngest of three, so I've got two older sisters. And I think all of us were offered the chance to sort of partake all sorts of different things when we were kids. So that was where we were really lucky. So, we got the chance to take part in sports. We got the chance to take part in this and that and the other. And we all got offered the chance to see and hear a live music event, just like we got the chance to see a live piece of theatre. We got the opportunity to taste different things as kids. And I was taken by my mother to see a Tchaikovsky ballet in London, and I had no idea what this was going to be about. And I was very young. I wasn't at secondary school by this stage. I was still at primary school, and I'd already started. Music was in the house. Music was always playing. The radio was always on. My mum and dad always listened to music, and but anyway, I got taken to my kind of live music taste, if you like, and I absolutely loved it. Just the theatre of being in that space, the kind of sense of drama that just sort of came across in that performance. I had no idea what it was about, but it was just overwhelming, and the music was just phenomenal. It just kind of hit me like just a sort of wave of kind of new sensations. And I managed to persuade my mum to buy me a cassette. So this is obviously quite a while ago, when we had cassettes, and she bought me a cassette of this ballet. Of the Nutcracker, I think it was, and to get my mum to buy something like that is quite a big deal, and I just used to listen to it all the time. And then, so I suppose that was the first thing, is that I had the opportunity to experience something live. And I suppose, without getting too far off the subject of the question that you just asked me, that's one of the things that is in my work at all times, that giving people the opportunity to partake of things, to access things in music, in the arts, because it's such a fundamental thing. It's a human right, as far as I'm concerned, and it can change people's lives immediately, as it did mine. And I'm not the only one. And it doesn't have to be music; it could be anything. But to experience it live in the flesh. So, and then the other really good bit of sort of good fortune I had was when I went to secondary school, which was a normal comprehensive school in Bolton. We had a head of music there, a guy called Christopher Wormold. And when he joined Smithfield School, he was, I think he must have been sort of early 30s. And when he joined there was no music department as such. And he, apparently in his interview, he said, within 5 years, I'll give you a national championship prize-winning brass band and this and that and the other. And all the members of senior management thought he was crazy. And apparently he did it in 3 or 4 years. And I joined this school once during this process, during this time. So there's this huge amount of activity going on in the music department. And by that point, I'd already started dabbling a bit in the piano. I'd already started kind of trying to make some tunes on the piano and experimenting with sounds and playing a bit of clarinet, playing a bit of recorder, just doing stuff. And my first love in terms of music was jazz, because that was, my dad loved jazz and we listened to jazz a lot. So when I found out there was a brass band, I sort of turned up to see Chris Wormald and said, I want to be a trumpet player, because I basically just wanted to sit in a jazz band and scream out really high notes and listen and be part of this really cool musical world, And he said, "No, you're a big lad. You can play the tuba. We need a tuba player." So I was absolutely gutted. And but then it was amazing, So, and one thing kind of just evolved out of another. I mean, I remember the first instrument that Chris gave me. It was this battered old. It was like it was like an old water boiler. I mean, the thing was probably, from a health and safety point of view, it's probably a lethal weapon. But I got given this thing and took it home and managed to get it working. And then I started learning it. And then we got some new instruments, and I eventually got a new instrument. And I was in the band, and I joined the local bands. And I used to play I did actually used to play in a jazz band, but I used to double on clarinet and tuba, which is not the coolest of doubling. And so I suppose my formative musical years, with the local music service, then I was in the National Youth Brass Band. I joined the National Youth Orchestra. Then I went to Chatham School of Music, but I was also always doing a lot of brass banding, which is good for your life skills, because as a young boy, you're kind of dealing with big, gruff blokes, and some real characters there, both male characters, female characters. They're pretty hard people, and so that was great from a musical point of view, but also from a kind of sort of survival point of view. But also it was all community music making, as well as being part of these kind of national youth ensembles. There was just a huge amount of sort of music making in the community, and seeing how important that was, both from when I was at school and then into the brass band world. So that really kind of took me up to the age of about A-level age, really, when I sort of went on to conservatoire.
Oh, wow. When it comes to being a conductor and a composer, what's the hardest thing about putting everything together and actually composing a piece?
Well, if we take them separately, conducting is, it's full of myths and legends, really. And the business has a lot to answer to for that. Okay. Seeing as we're just talking, just the two of us.
Yeah.
And but I think ultimately, a conductor has to remember that a conductor is one part of the process. You have to leave your ego, well away from the situation, because you're part of the team. You're part of everybody else who's doing stuff. And actually, I can't remember, there's a rock and roll musician who was criticising a DJ once, and he just said, "I always have to remind DJs that they basically just play other people's music." Well, when you're a conductor, you don't make any sound, like you're reliant on being able to make everybody else cooperate. And so I think the hardest thing, because of course, as a conductor, you've got to learn the music, you've got to learn the history of the music, and you've got to look at the context of why that piece of music was written and what that piece of music is about. But that's a kind of process that's going to go on for the rest of your life, because also you look at a piece of music or a film or whatever it is from your current situation, and in 10 years' time, 20 years' time, your position and your view might be completely different. But the main thing that's always going to be something that you're going to have to deal with are the people that are in front of you. And that I think is the biggest challenge, and it's also the biggest sort of magical part of it, in a way, as a conductor, because you're taking a group of people, be they students, be they amateurs or professionals, however they are made up, if you like, from their musical backgrounds, and we're all trying to sort of create something. We're all, from our different viewpoints of life and where we are in our sort of journeys. And you're bringing them all together, and you're making something there and then. And sometimes that's quite a logical process, and sometimes it can be really difficult. If people are going through a tough time, and people might be a bit awkward, people might be this, people might be that. You've got to deal with all these different human situations, and human beings can be complicated. I sometimes joke with people and say, music, I think, is the greatest thing in the world, but human beings drive me mad. It's like, I mean that with the greatest amount of affection to everybody, but because I drive myself mad. I mean, I get so angry with myself sometimes. So I think it's people, really. That's the thing. As a composer, it's a very different thing because it's a solitary process, isn't it?
Yes, yeah.
I mean, of course, you have to speak to musicians when you're writing a piece of music to ask for their advice about how you technically can do something. Because it's like, how do I get this effect? How do I get this sound? How do I, so you need to speak to people then. But ultimately, you have to write it on your own, and it takes a lot of time. And I think the main thing is to both be organised about your time, but also not to, personally speaking, sometimes it's not to rush it. You don't have to go, kind of blasting in there, and to actually allow yourself to think beyond maybe the first few ideas that you've had. Sometimes when I'm writing a piece of music, I might have a few sort of sketches. I still sketch things down on paper before I basically use the computer as a word processor, but I do a lot of sketching. And then sometimes I'll let that idea settle and I'll go off and do something completely different because I want to try and allow my brain to chew it over a bit and then to come back at it and try and cook it a bit more and then think, right, because I think your subconscious can really, really do that. But I think it's that balance, isn't it? It's like the practicality of the deadline. It's like, okay, I've got to have this piece written by next week. But then also, don't just go diving in. Don't just resort back to the thing that that works. Because then, in a way, you're not challenging yourself as a composer, as a writer. You're kind of regurgitating something you've already done. And I think for your own sense of worth, if you're your own critic, then you need to push yourself more. That David Bowie thing, isn't there, about just being in the water, just where your feet can't quite touch the floor, where it's almost a bit dangerous, and that really resonates. I think you have to do that to basically almost completely, get it wrong.
Yeah,
to go to somewhere that you've never been.
It's good to make yourself feel uncomfortable. You do learn more when you're in an uncomfortable space because you have to push yourself and you have to push your boundaries. That's another thing. How do you push your boundaries for yourself when you're composing, and especially when you're in front of an audience? That's another question I want to ask you. So it's like a double question for you. So how is it when you're in front of an audience after you've composed your work, your piece of work, and it's being played in front of an audience? How does that make you feel?
If I don't know, if I'm in the audience, or sometimes I conduct my own music, not always. I'm not one of these conductors who puts my music onto the programs because I think that's a bit obvious. I'd rather kind of write the score and then just give it to somebody else and go, there you go, and you deal with it. Because also, I think as a composer, you must trust the musicians to sort of make their own conclusions about what you've written. A score is just like getting a script, be it for a theatre, be it for a film, whatever. You have to make your own choices. But sometimes it's terrifying, because you have your own view of how your piece is. And especially if you've entrusted it to other people, then suddenly it's completely out of your hands. I don't think I mind so much about whether or not people like it. I think when you first have your first few experiences of putting your stuff out there for other people to have an opinion on, you can be scared because you want people to like it. And actually, that's not really important in a way. Because if you just write stuff that you think people are going to like, then again, you're not really pushing yourself.
Yes,
because
I agree.
Surely the best music, and it's any type of music, but the best music forces the listener at times to question themselves and to hold up a mirror to themselves. And so that's not something that people like to do, but that doesn't mean that they don't think that music's great.
Yeah.
But yeah, sometimes obviously as a general feeling, it can be pretty scary sitting there, just sort of wait, because then sometimes you've got to go up on stage and take a bow and it's like, you might just want to leave. It's like, what, thanks very much. I'm going to go home now.
Talk to me a little bit about education. I know we spoke a little bit about it when we were speaking about where you were brought up and how education was, and a little bit about your musical background. But talk to me a little bit about education within what you do as a profession, because if someone wanted to go into the same profession or a similar profession as you, what would they need to do in the just a process? What was your process of getting you where you are today?
Well, I've been fortunate in certain respects. I mean, I've gone through quite a big change. You know, I started off in very kind of traditional education, you know, like a normal school, and then I went up into Chesham School of Music in Manchester to do my A levels, and then from there I've gone to the Guildhall School of Music and Drama in London, which is a conservatoire, and I've also studied conducting in Russia, and I was very fortunate enough to study privately with Sir Colin Davis, who I think was probably one of the greatest influences of my life. So I've had this kind of huge range of institutions, from the specialist to the kind of general schools and all that sort of stuff. I don't think there is a typical path, though, you know, that people can follow, really. Because a lot of musicians, for instance, you know, they go off to they go to university, they study something completely different. Gabriel Yared, I think, the film composer, I don't think he came to music quite late, actually, relatively speaking, and kind of taught himself, and then went and then got obviously got lessons and got a mentor, and then just sort of, but he came to it as an adult, and now he writes this amazing film music. I don't think there is I don't think there's a path. I don't think there's one path that you need. And I think the moment anyone tells you that you can't do something, in a way, that's the time that you should really start believing probably that you can. Because, you know, I mean, it's not like I wanted to become a ballet dancer, you know, or the prima ballerina. I think, you know, if you have your heart set on something, if you've had that fire ignited inside you about something that you've really fallen in love with, at whatever stage it is. And this is the thing about education with adults. You know, a lot of the time people think about education, they think there's a cut-off point of about 18.
Everyone says that.
Even younger, you know. And actually, you know, I mean, my mum, you know, she joined a local choir a few years ago, and she's joined this local community band up in Bolton.
Yeah.
And she's 80. You know?
Wow.
And she's only been playing a couple of years. And she absolutely loves it, you know. She goes, and so I think education is a lifelong process. I think that's where the issues of the business come in, because actually, as people, as artists, as creators, whatever we are, but also in any other walk of life, hopefully we're all learning all the time, you know, and we're all developing, and we're all trying to ask more questions about ourselves and about what we do and how we can get better, and we're making mistakes and all this sort of stuff. Sometimes the business doesn't really allow you to do that. Sometimes, you know, you're kind of criticised and you're judged. And that's, I suppose, what I mean when I said you shouldn't worry if people don't like what you do. You know, if you write something and people don't like it, it doesn't matter, because your journey goes on as long as you're alive, you know, in my opinion. And if people want to judge you, then that really, you know, that really is their problem, because no one should judge anybody in that respect. So I don't know. I don't think there's a particular path that you can go on. I think if you're hooked on something at whatever point in your journey that you suddenly get that, you know, it grabs you, and you have an opportunity where you've experienced something, then you find the path with whatever you can do.
I like that answer. That makes sense. I wish more people thought like that. What is the best? No, it's true. People are like, I can't do it. Oh, okay, then they give up. But if you just have that fire in you, it's nice to hear people say that. What is the best career decision you have ever made?
Yeah, I don't really have an answer to that question. I think the best decision I made when I was at music college, so I was like 18, 19 years old, was I went to music college as a tuba player and also as a composer. And I'd kind of got a bit interested in conducting, like I knew I wanted to do it. but I was trying to do all these different things, and I suddenly realised, 1 year into a 4-year degree on an instrument, that I didn't want to do that anymore, because I thought that I'd want to go on and play in ensembles and orchestras if I could for a number of years, and then later on in my life I'd make the change. And then actually, I suddenly realised that if I knew I wanted to compose, and if I knew I wanted to conduct, then I had to be brave and quit the thing that I really knew and go for it. And so I suppose that was definitely the best decision that I made, because it allowed me to completely. I knew that I just needed to be brave and to just focus on that thing, or those two things that I loved. But in terms of other career decisions, I don't know. I guess that's a question I'd have to answer after this life, really, because all these decisions are still playing out, and it's very easy. I think the thing to flip that question on its head a bit is it's very easy to look back and think and look at all the mistakes that you've made, and just think, oh God, because hindsight is 20/20 vision,
Yeah, no, that's true. And, that makes sense.
But I think it's also it's a very dangerous thing to do, to sort of, if you look back with too much regret, because ultimately, as long as, to kind of paraphrase Einstein, as long as you don't do the same thing again and expect a different outcome, because that's the definition of insanity, then you learn from everything you've kind of done wrong, Yeah.
When was the last time you done something new?
Something new?
Yeah.
But in terms of music?
In terms of music, yeah.
Yeah. I suppose today, actually, I've decided that, because I've got various big pieces that I'm working on at the minute, and I decided that in this period of kind of lockdown and lack of live musical, live ensembles and stuff, that I needed to take a bit of ownership of what I could do within my own creative process, because I've got these big pieces that I'm writing, but then one of them's for next year and one of them could be for 2 years' time. So it's very tempting to then always just think, I'll start that piece next week, And actually, I decided to give myself a series of little deadlines to write short pieces of music for individual performers that are of instruments that I don't normally write exclusively for. Like, they'll be in the ensembles that I'll write pieces for, but to challenge myself to sort of learn about new instruments that I don't really know anything about. And so yesterday I finished one of the pieces for bass guitar, which is an instrument. I mean, there aren't many instruments I don't really love, and I love the bass guitar, but I had no idea how to write for it. And so I'm in the middle, basically, of getting a load of feedback from this performer, a guy called Joe Nixon, who's a very lovely and a phenomenal bass player. And he said it looks great, but then I always know that means he's going to tear it apart, because I've written things that I'm basically just need him to teach me how to write the things that I've kind of tried to write down. And today, the same. I'm writing these are all short pieces. So I'm writing a short piece for a very particular percussion setup with all sorts of different instruments that I've never really written before, as their own little sort of setup. And today I got a little video about that. So I now need to sort of go down and basically, especially with percussion pieces, you have to draw out the picture of the setup for the percussion, because you've got the practical reality of how a performer moves around the instruments. So he's sent me some pictures, and then today he sent me some other videos of some very weird and wonderful sounds that you can create with certain beaters and all that sort of stuff. So now I need to go and try and learn about them and learn about some different kind of dance rhythms, because they're some of the stuff that I want to bring into the piece. So, yeah.
Wow. Who do you sometimes compare yourself to? Hey, he's laughing.
I honestly, I'm not just trying to get out. I don't compare myself to.
Well, that's a good thing. That's a good thing.
But I'll be honest with you, and I think when I was younger, and this is one of the things I've learned, and I learned it the hard way, is I don't compare myself to anybody, but I think when you're younger, there's a great tendency to kind of look side to side to see what everybody else is doing. Because when you're younger, especially, I mean, I'm 40 now, so I'm really cracking on a bit.
Stop it!
But when you're really, quite young, and you're gonna you're kind of you think you're gonna burst into the world. There's a great tendency to look side to side, and that's a really dangerous thing to do, because once you start judging yourself against others,
yes,
it's really just the wrong thing to do on every level.
Yeah.
So I don't compare myself to anybody, but I am guilty in the past of looking side to side.
How did you feel when you first performed on stage?
As a conductor?
Yeah.
I was terrified. Absolutely terrified. Yeah. I remember, there's just this overwhelming sensation of musical sounds and sounds flying at you in all directions, and this feeling that you had to somehow kind of react to everything, and it's kind of sensory overload. and then daft things like you forget to breathe, so then after a while one of your legs starts shaking.
What?
And you think it's because you're nervous, but basically you're so kind of sort of rigid, and I don't know, it's just everything can just go wrong,
Wow.
And so there's a kind of appearance and reality, really, with the whole wanting to get into the conducting thing. You spend all that time away from the musicians and the stage, doing, thinking about, the piece of music that you're going to conduct, and studying it and learning it and all that kind of background stuff. And then you suddenly get there, and I remember the first few times I was absolutely terrified. It's just,
Aww, so what you say?
But I think that's normal, I mean...
No, it is. It is totally normal for you to do, even when you go for any job. I think when you go for a job interview, when you go on a set to take pictures. I've been scared too. When I got my first major job as a photographer, I was scared. I didn't know whether or not I was good enough. But obviously they must have seen something in you for you to be there in the first place.
Well, I'm talking about the first ever time. Like, I'm talking about when I was at college. You know, when I first started sort of putting orchestras together, and first started. So these were orchestras that were sort of made up of my fellow student friends. So you're first starting to experience what it's like to stand in front of a symphony orchestra, and how you try and make that symphony orchestra move musically, which you can only really learn through doing it. And I suppose that's the same with anything, but that's one of the difficulties about conducting, because with composing, you can compose on your own, and if you can play the piano or whatever, then you can hear back and like, you're a photographer, so you can take pictures on your own and you can see the end result. Where you're conducting, I suppose it's a bit like, being a director. You have to get a group of people together and feel the kind of physicality of it. And that's, I think, what was terrifying about it, because you hadn't built up the experience in any capacity to change anything that was going wrong. Because I think sometimes with conducting, there's kind of three aspects of time that you're dealing with. There's all three sort of parts of that moment. There's the idea that you're bringing to the table about what you think should be going on with this piece of music, generally speaking, even if you're open, for collaboration, if you like. There's what you're getting back from your musicians, and then there's what you need to do to make it go back to where you want things to go. And that's the kind of response to that at times. As you get to know a group of musicians better, or if you're dealing with really good musicians, that's quite a nuanced sort of set of reactions to have. Sometimes if you're dealing with something that's slightly more catastrophic, then you might be less nuanced, if you know what I mean. I'm mindful that I shouldn't use any Anglo-Saxon here. So yeah, and I think it's allowing yourself what you learn is just allowing yourself the ability to take that moment to think. Because when you're conducting, sometimes when you're really sort of starting out, you think that everything's happening very, very quickly, and it feels like an hour's gone by, and you look at your watch and it's like 2 minutes, and you feel mentally and emotionally exhausted because you sort of feel like you've just been thrown everything. And actually, once you allow yourself to just think and to trust the musicians a bit and to let them, just sort of interact with what's going on and to balance all these kind of different things and just allow yourself a bit to have a moment, then you just sort of relax into it a little bit more, and you can allow yourself the chance to actually listen to what's going on, as opposed to not allowing yourself into what's happening on the stage.
Oh, wow. If I was to ask you to choose one quote that represents you as a person, what quote would you choose, and why would you choose that particular quote?
Well, I've been thinking about this a bit, and there aren't many things in life where I have, like a favourite this or a favourite that, which in my career so far has possibly been a problem, because I don't tend to make anything. I don't have a favourite composer. I don't have a favourite anything, really.
Yeah.
Because I just think you can learn so much from so many different things.
Yes, I
and
agree.
The more disparate those things are in appearance,
I agree.
often they're the most complementary. But one thing that I think I've thought of a lot over the last few years, personally as well as professionally, is the idea that it's the journey, not the destination.
Yes.
Because I think you can apply that to micro and macro moments in your life, and also in your professional life, and also day to day, hour by hour. It's how you kind of, because no one knows where the end point is.
Yeah.
If you're being really fatalistic about it, no one really knows what's going to happen, do they?
That's true. That's true.
But also in your work, you don't know where it's all going to end up. You don't know where things are going to go, and there will be peaks, and there will be troughs, and there will be massive frustrations and a huge amount of knockbacks, and there will be this and that and the other. But actually, it's how you walk through that, how you keep moving forward through that, and how you are as a human being, whether or not you embrace it as an opportunity to learn and grow and develop, and to kind of give that out to other people. As much as whether or not you're just solely sort of focused on what's going on. I remember another. It was not a quote really, but I was lucky enough to have a few lessons with a conductor called Bernard Haitink, and he was basically one of the absolute legends of conducting. Just a phenomenal conductor, and so humble, like just phenomenal. And when I first met him, he asked me why I wanted to be a conductor, and I gave him all these reasons, because I'm a composer, and I want to, my composing is something that I see as something that's going to outlive me completely, and it's something that I have to do as a composer. I have to write. But with conducting, you have the opportunity to work with musicians, and you have the opportunity to work with audiences, and if you're lucky enough to be a music director, then you have the chance to develop projects and collaborations and all this sort of stuff. And he said to me, good, because, if your answer was that you wanted to earn loads of money and stay in big posh hotels and this and that and the other, then I'd ask you to go away. He said, because, really, you have to accept the fact that if you do something that you love, you've got more of a chance of failure than you have of success. But if you can live with the fact that you'll probably fail quite a lot of the time, but you still love the thing that you're going to do, then you could succeed, because you've accepted the fact that you've probably got more chance of things going wrong.
Yeah, no, that's true. I agree. It happens to me all the time.
Tell me about it.
Believe me, it happens to me all the time. Let's talk a little bit about success. And I'm sure you've possibly heard in one of my podcasts that I always ask people about success and defining what success means to them as an individual. But what does success mean to you as an individual?
Oh, you mean as an individual or as a musician?
It can be as an individual, or you can combine the two, because they work hand in hand, really.
Well, okay. Well, I think as an individual, that's a really tricky one, isn't it? I mean, I think as a conductor, I think you generally speaking, without getting too sort of boring about, the intricacies of the mechanics of music, I suppose. As a conductor, if you can create a rehearsal process and a performance, or performances, if you're doing more than one, which are kind of greater, which are, as a communion, are greater than the sum of their individual parts, i.e. you've got a group of musicians, whatever group it is, be it an ensemble, a band, an orchestra, a choir, a whole company, and the kind of net result is bigger than the individual parts, then that's a huge achievement. I mean, you are only one part of it. That's the thing to remember. But I think as a process that within which you are the conductor, that's great. And that doesn't always happen, a performance still might be good, but it just, it's, and especially when you start dealing with really good orchestras, a really good orchestra can play, because you're dealing with really, really good musicians, and they can play already. They don't need, they don't really need anybody else sometimes. But when you see a really good orchestra with a really good conductor, then if it goes beyond the kind of what the individual parts are, then that's amazing. And I think especially that's true with amateur or semi-professional music making. That's the great challenge, because you're getting people often to go way beyond their comfort zone about what they believe is possible. You're getting them to believe in something which their human nature is to sort of go, "You've got to be joking, there's no way we can do that." But actually, if you can convince them and get them to trust you and then work together on it and then achieve something, that on a human level as well as a musical level is really quite amazing. As a composer, I don't know, like, there are some moments when you're composing, and even if it's a piece of music that is still yet to see the light of day in a concert, you might suddenly get a sound or a chord or something that it's just like, wow, where on earth did that come from? That's amazing. And that's a great, it's such a buzz, really, to sort of get this combination of notes, and it just sounds, whatever the atmosphere is that you want, if it's cool or exciting or dramatic or scary or dark or whatever, and you're just like, wow, yeah, that's it. And as a human being, I don't really know, to be honest. I think you just try and be a decent person, don't you?
Yeah, of course.
And try and not be. In my life, I've had to work within the music business. I've had to work in a lot of different jobs, ranging from the guy who unloads the lorry and sets the stage, to the person who writes the music and conducts concerts. I've done the whole gamut of jobs, and I think it's just important in life, as it is when you're working with musicians, to remember that everyone, no one's better than anybody else.
That's true.
That's what I think. Ego is such a horrific thing, and actually, if you can just go through your life trying to be decent, trying to listen to other people, and just leave your ego, just get rid of it.
I like it. No, because
it's such a destructive thing.
I always ask people, is ego a good or a bad thing? But you've literally just asked my question, and that was one of my questions. Whereas ego is it's a hard thing to talk about, but a lot of people find, like, I was speaking to somebody yesterday on a podcast, and they had a huge ego. And
Right.
and I said, do you not find that your ego will self-destruct one day? And then they said no, but I think it's because they are still quite young.
Right.
And sometimes when you're younger, you think that you know everything, and believe me, we don't. We don't know everything. And we have to go through the lessons of life to understand that your journey will take you to places, and it will test you. And when it will test you, you have to be ready. If you are not ready, that's when you will destruct. And I think ego plays a big part in that. So thank you for answering that part of the ego, because I know it's true, because it's important for people to understand what ego can do in any profession.
Yeah. I think it's an incredibly destructive thing, and it's a barrier between human beings.
Yeah.
You know, if you have two human beings having a conversation, or if you have a group of people, you know, if everyone has their ego, it's like a shield around them.
Yeah.
And it stops. You know, it's like I don't know. It's like a self-defense mechanism gone wrong.
Yeah, basically. What would you say to your younger self if you saw your younger self in front of you? I like this
Get
one.
a haircut. That's what I say. I mean, I'm going bald now, but I used to have massive floppy hair, huge bin glasses. Oh, flipping out, yeah. Yeah.
I should have told you to pull out a picture.
Get a haircut, mate. And I don't know, because just don't waste it. I don't think I've been one of these people who's kind of wasted time, you know, without sounding very simplistic about it. But even more so, I would, you know, crack on it. Just don't waste any time whatsoever. Doesn't mean you always have to be trying to produce something, you know, in some frenetic kind of obsessed way, but just whatever opportunity is there, however kind of sort of tangential it might seem to what it is you're interested in or whatever it is you're doing, just embrace it and do it and learn from it. Just more of that, right? Just do it more, you know, and you'll always learn something about something that you can then bring into something else. Just keep absorbing as much as possible. You know.
Do you ever get lonely within your profession?
Not when you're composing. When I'm composing, which, like I said before, is quite a, you know, as a solitary profession. No, you know, I can, you know, in the past I've gone off and I'm quite happy being on my own and writing stuff. Conducting is a different one, because, you know, once you've finished a concert, you are really on your own, you know, and that can be a bit weird, you know, especially if you're in a foreign country. You know, you're working with a professional orchestra or something. You don't really have a lot of, I suppose, you know, friends, family, you know, you're just kind of there in a hotel. And that can be a bit strange. You know, you've gone from this big sort of process and it's been building. You have the concert, bang, it's gone. And then it's like, oh, right, okay. So that can sometimes be quite lonely.
Oh, what is the best advice somebody has ever given you?
Again, you see this. I've been fortunate enough to meet so many good people. You know, just trying to pick out one thing. I think it was Colin Davis. Sir Colin Davis who warned me about the perils of ego, and he said to me that he spoke from personal experience about the destructive element of it, and he was so wonderfully honest about that. You know, here was this guy, you know, when I met him, I used to go and see his concerts at the London Symphony Orchestra, and he was genuinely like a wizard. You know, he would gracefully just glide onto stage. You know, he just moved so effortlessly, and he just made the music, the orchestra just you know, played out their skins, and he was so softly spoken and very deeply thought out. Everything he said. You know, I'd sometimes, if I had lessons with him, I'd sometimes ask him a question, and obviously I was a bit nervous, but it felt like an eternity before he answered. But it was one of the first things he warned me about, which was the perils of ego, and that it would just waste a lot of time and a lot of energy if you were to go down that road. And I think that has really, really struck me, because a lot of the other advice you get through your life is kind of related to a thing, isn't it? You know, be it your job, your profession, your vocation, cooking, you know, whatever it is, you know, doing a sport. But some things are applicable to everything, and that is definitely one of them, because you can apply that comment about ego when you're standing in the queue at a supermarket.
Yes,
can't you? I mean,
of course you can. Yeah. Hey. What? Okay. No, it's true. What excites you about life, Benjamin?
Oh, you didn't tell me the questions were going to get harder. I mean, it's just like, again, I don't want to sound like I'm not trying to be specific, but there's so many things, aren't there, that can excite you about life.
No, sure. Is there anything specific that comes to mind for some people it's waking up in the morning, they just know that they're going to be able to do what they love. But is there anything that excites you even when you wake up, or when you know you're going to do your passion, or is there anything that just resonates with you as an individual that makes you feel excited about life itself?
I think creating things that really gets me buzzed up. Be it if I'm sat down, writing or sketching some ideas, or at the piano or the keyboard and just sort of noodling around, or coming up with an idea for a project or for a collaboration, or it's like, we could do this, we could do that, we could do that. Again, I mean, it's weird, like, because those are all kind of solitary moments, I suppose, where you're I suppose it's like the anticipation of something that you could do. And if you're composing, then it's something that you can do. You haven't got to deal with the kind of reality of, how you're going to do it and who you're kind of doing it with. But I think that side of what I do, I really love, and I suppose that's one of the reasons I love composing, because it's the possibility of what you're going to do.
That's true.
I just think it's fantastic.
No, that's perfect. What would you do differently if you knew that nobody was judging you? A hard one.
That is a really hard one. Yeah, sorry, I know silence isn't great on.
Oh, that's what editing's for.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it just made me sound like I actually know what my answers are going to be. Again, I don't really know if I thought no one was judging me, because I honestly don't think that I've ever really and I don't mean this in a kind of stereotypical rock and roll sort of like, I don't care, man, what everyone thinks.
Yeah.
But I'm not really bothered about what people judging me.
Well, that's good. I wish there were more people like that in the world.
Yeah, but I think sometimes I sort of kind of say that. I mean, I think, I am my own biggest critic. I can convince myself, even a piece of music that I've written that I think is okay, or a concert that I've done that I thought was okay, and I can convince myself that it was probably a load of old rubbish, and so therefore which I think on the one hand is good, because you're constantly questioning of yourself, as long as it doesn't become an obsession, and become destructive, which can then be obviously very dangerous. But I think if you're questioning of yourself, then really, there are a few people in my life whose opinion I really value, and obviously some of their opinions sometimes are hilarious, like my mum's opinion sometimes just cracks me up. Oh, thanks. But everyone else, I don't really, I'm not really that I don't really mind what they think, as long as I've tried to be a decent person. I think that the time that I have the most sort of regret is if I feel, rightly or wrongly, that I have behaved in a way which is not good, to put it simplistically, because then you sort of think, well, then I've created this opinion of my work or of myself or whatever, and basically I kind of got it, I cocked it up really.
Okay. No, that's really good. I like the way you answered that, actually. It made sense. What advice would you give to your fans or your followers? We have them, even if we don't think we do have them, about being positive, optimistic, and just trying to take day by day within our life to continue to do what we love. Because there's always a point in our life where we felt like we didn't have the support, or we had lack of money, or something just wasn't going right. What advice would you give to people listening to this podcast today with me and you about just continuing to go on?
Wow. I think if there's anyone listening who does, anything in, in music, in the arts or whatever, but also, I suppose this could apply to a lot of jobs really. You probably had to put up with a lot of knockbacks and a lot of setbacks, and actually at the time those things can make you feel, they can sometimes make you feel like you want to give up, or that you're not good enough, or that you're this and you're that and you're the other. but actually they're all the things that can, as long as you embrace whatever it is that's kind of didn't maybe get you to that point that you wanted to go to, be it a job, be it a commission, be it a gig, be it whatever. Actually, if you can be brave enough to look at yourself and think about why that might have happened, and then you can honestly ask yourself as to whether or not that's justified and whether it isn't. And when it isn't, that's fine. You know, if something, you know, wrong has happened, then fine, you put it in the box and you forget about it. You don't let it take any of your kind of positive energy away from you. But if there are things that you can take from that journey that you were on in that moment, and remember, it's just a moment, then you can kind of grow with it. And then once you get to the next sort of event, whatever it is, be it a similar thing or something different in your life or in your work, then you can kind of bring all that to play and absorb it and learn from it and then bring it in. And I suppose, you know, that's probably what experience is. You know, some people think experience is like some sort of fuddy-duddy word that basically means that we don't listen to younger people. You know, it's like you're not experienced enough. And actually, I suppose in its best sense, experience is basically just putting up with an awful lot of sometimes, like, you know, bad things, because and sometimes learning how to deal with good things well. You know, and making mistakes and then having the honesty to learn from them and to move forward and be better today than in a way than you were yesterday. And that's always the goal. You know, again, in our work, in our life, is that you try to be better today than you were yesterday, and it's really hard. Like, you know, because if you're open to kind of expecting more of yourself, then you probably a lot of the time feel like you've kind of let yourself down because it's like, well, I didn't do that, you know, and I was, you know, and you kind of, oh, why did I say that? But that's good because you're trying to, you know, be better, be a better person, be a better parent, be a better partner, be a better professional, be a better, you know, whatever it is. And it doesn't matter how fast or slow that process is, as long as you feel like you're incrementally moving forward. People always ask me, like my mates sort of say, oh, how are you getting on, mate? You know, like there's various kind of exchanges with musicians. So you say to a freelance musician, like if they're performing, you say, oh, what are you up to? And they'll say, a bit of teaching, a bit of gigging, you know, and that's it. Like it's a kind of stock response, you know. It's like, I'm doing a bit of teaching, I'm doing some gigs, you know. What are you doing? But people say to me, how are you getting on? I was like, I'm staggering forward, you know. Yeah. Like I'm trundling along because I'm so aware of my own, of all the things that I want to try and do and achieve and learn most of the point, and I'm increasingly aware of all the things that I don't know. That's why I'm aware more of what I don't know than what I do know. And I'm aware about, it's like, I'm really interested in that, but I'm really rubbish at it. And I'm really interested in this, but I'm really rubbish at it. But I really like it, but I'm really bad at it. But that's all good because you in a way, that's, to have that inquisitiveness is so important. And if someone ever tries to tell you that to try and dampen that kind of fire of, you know, being inquisitive, then, you know, that really says everything about them and nothing about you.
That's true.
You know?
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that.
Questions, you know.
I'm so glad you said that. Finally, my last question for you, Benjamin, is where can we find you on all your social medias if someone would like to contact you?
Oh, well, if anyone, yeah, with pleasure. I've got a website. It's Benjamin Ellin, ELLIN.com. And then I think on there's a link to Twitter, and I think I'm on Instagram, although I'm not massively. My partner helps me out. My partner helps me out with Instagram. These are all amazing worlds that you know, and some people have a real gift at making doing social media, and but I stick with my website, and I've on Facebook and Twitter and stuff like that. But and there's some links on there to some extracts of some of my music, some of the projects I've been in. And I'm always keen. I genuinely mean this. Always keen to hear from people from different kind of musical worlds, because I personally regard music as music. It's, you know, I work in a variety of areas, and I've been lucky enough to work with a really wide range of instrumentalists and musicians from different musical cultures, different musical backgrounds. So it's all, to me, it's all really fascinating as well. And I've been lucky enough to collaborate with people from different sort of, writers and choreographers and video makers and all that sort of stuff. If there are people who are curious or interested, it's a bit like this, the opportunity to meet you, Savvy, and to chat to you and to look at some of your work and to get to know that. To me, it's all it's so enriching, so if there are people who want to get in touch, then it's all there on the website.
Benjamin, I want to thank you so much for coming on the Yes People podcast today. You've been a bundle of wisdom, and it's nice to no seriously, like you've shared your wisdom with everyone. Always laughs when I say that. But you've given out so much knowledge for people to learn, share, and also positivity as well, because I think it's something that I think the world is kind of lacking at the moment, that positivity. Although there are areas where positivity does shine, I think the more we work together to make positivity shine, the more that we can uplift other people.
So, I mean, the only thing I'd say about that is that I don't know if there's a moment. I agree exactly with what you're saying, and it's always easier to be negative. It's always easier to destroy than it is to create.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I think, without getting too conspiracy theory about anything at all, I think it serves our society in a way to keep everyone a little bit sort of
suppressed,
wary of things, because then we're a bit easier to kind of manipulate and to change our minds about things. And I don't think it's any surprise that people who are artistic, people who are creative, people who express their true selves through whatever medium that is, those subjects in education, those people are often kind of, sort of, that's not the mainstream. So if you look at schools now and young people who are trying to get an education, the creative subjects are the things that are cut. There's a reason you don't want people to be creative, because it stops. If people are creative, then they ask questions about everything.
Yes.
All the time. And really, you don't want to people to be like that. So, of course, what you say is I completely agree with, but that's why it's even more important to hold dear, that idea of, being interested and being creative and being curious and being inquisitive about that, and to kind of pass it forward, because it's like I said before, it's a birthright, and it's so crucial to the kind of health of our emotive state.
Yeah.
It's so important.
Yeah, most definitely. Benjamin, I want to thank you again for coming on the Young People podcast show. You're most welcome. Guys, thank you so much for listening to the Young People podcast. Please remember, you can subscribe to Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, and any other platform that you prefer listening to. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And you can also donate to the Young People podcast so we can continue to speak to people like Benjamin. All you need to do is go to the Savia Rocks website, which is www.savia.rocks, or simply type in paypal.me/Us People Podcast. Thank you for listening. Stay happy, stay positive, and as always, please continue to be kind to one another.
It was really enjoyable. Yeah, really nice. I feel it's very, sort of humbling, to sort of have an opportunity to express your views. Let's back to reality now, Savia. Come on.